grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I celebrate recovery over chemical dependency. I struggle with codependency. I am currently 6 years and 4 months and 1 day today clean of heroin and crack. And a fun fact about myself is I recently have become the director of the women's treatment facility that I graduated from 5 years ago.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Brianne, for coming out and being willing to share your journey with us today. So let's just get started right at the beginning. Let's talk about your childhood. Did you grow up with both your parents? Did you have siblings? Was there trauma?
Right. Well, I grew up, my home was extreme duplicity. I'm the oldest of 3 children. I have 2 younger brothers. My mom was a very devout Catholic, and my dad was an alcoholic and a criminal. So there was a lot of, when I was with my mom, I would go to church with her and things were good. But then with my dad, there was a lot of verbal and physical abuse from him. Verbal abuse from my brothers as well. So there was a lot of trauma in my childhood. My parents divorced when I was around, I think I was in like the 3rd grade. So then we split, and it was okay when I was with my mom at my grandparents' house for the most part. But then on the weekends when I was with my dad, after my mom divorced him, that's kind of where the physical abuse started.
Okay. And then what happened with that?
Well, I was also a very heavyset child because I found my first real escape from my emotions, I guess you would say, in food. So like going into the 8th grade, I weighed over 200 pounds. I was a lot shorter. I was also introduced to cutting by a friend when I was around 13. And that's also when I started smoking pot. Cutting was my go-to release for many years because it was a pain that I could control. I couldn't control what was happening to me or the inner pain and turmoil that I felt, but with cutting, I could choose the location, the depth, the amount of time. And so in an out-of-control world with abuse and other things, I needed that control.
How was high school for you?
High school wasn't really a good experience for me. I was friends with the sort of popular girls, but because I was the big girl, I was like their muscle. And a lot of times at home, I was told by my dad and my brothers that I was fat and disgusting and irritating and annoying and nobody wanted me around. So I also learned at a very young age, that's where like my codependency and people pleasing came in, because if I supplied the alcohol, if I supplied the drugs, people actually wanted me around.
Yeah.
And it also led to, I was trying to seek love and attention in all the wrong ways. And because of the abuse from my dad and my brothers, I thought that's how guys treat women. So I also was easy prey for men that were manipulators, narcissists. And it was always the older men. Like when I was 13, my boyfriend was 19. When I was 16, my boyfriend was 26. It was like I was prey. And so falling for a lot of that stuff just kind of fueled the need to drink and smoke weed and do harder drugs to kind of escape that shame and the guilt that I felt.
Yeah. So what did you do when you were about like 18? Were you still with the boyfriends? And
when I was 18, I was trying to I thought I was like functioning. I was constantly at the bars. I always looked older than I was, especially because I'm, a little busty. Mm-hmm. So I could get into the bars, and we would go to a lot of the bars that sold cocaine and other things. And I was still hanging out with crowds that were a lot older than me. So it was easy to find the drugs. I was still bouncing from guy to guy, different abusive situations. I did get my GED at 19. Okay. And around 21, I enrolled in nursing school, and I would work during the day, go to nursing school in the evening, and then it was straight to the bars. Even in my like nursing scrubs, I was going to the bars almost every night. Most nights I would only get like 3-4 hours of sleep because I would lean on, coke to get me through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Did you graduate nursing school?
I did.
Wow.
I did. I graduated nursing school. I actually was able to give the speech at my nursing school graduation. I was about 23 when I graduated nursing school, but I was still, I was living the bar life, thinking I was living my best life. I didn't see anything wrong with it.
Right.
And the drugs and the alcohol just masked more traumas that were happening, you know, with older men and different things like that. And then when I was around 26, I met my daughter's father in a bar, and that relationship, you know, it was centered around like partying and drinking. He is a good man, but I found out we broke up around New Year's of 2005, and then I found out in 2006 that I was pregnant, and I had 2 abortions when I was a teenager, and I couldn't bring myself to have another abortion because I was still running from the pain and the guilt and the shame I felt from having abortions in the past. So I chose to have my daughter, and I did give up like drinking and the hard drugs while I was pregnant, but I was still smoking weed quite frequently during my pregnancy. And she was actually born in 2006, completely healthy, which I was grateful. But I had a very hard delivery with her. She gave me 3rd-degree tears. It took them 45 minutes to stitch me up. So I was given my first script of opiates. Fell in love. Absolutely fell in love. And then just the way that it played out, because I got that script of opiates, and then like a month later, I had to get wisdom teeth pulled, and then I had a back injury, and then the other side of the wisdom teeth. So it was one doctor's appointment or dentist appointment, one right after the other, after that first script. So for a good solid 8-9 months, I was getting scripts of opiates from all these doctors and the dentist. So by the time the script stopped, I was already addicted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So at that point, I started just buying pills on the street. And within 2 years, every single dime I made as a nurse was going towards buying pills. The habit was getting out of control. So somebody suggested, hey, you know, heroin is cheaper, and you just lean in a little bit, and you'll feel what you feel from the pills. So I switched to snorting heroin, and it goes back to like the denial and the justification things that I learned from a young age. I would always say, well, I'm not a junkie because I'm not using a needle. I justified it. Like, you know, it's the doctors started this, blaming everybody instead of actually taking responsibility for my own choices. But it was only a matter of time before I switched to the needle. I quit working as a nurse because the board of nursing suspected I was stealing narcotics. I absolutely was stealing narcotics, so they had every reason to suspect. But when I quit nursing and I needed to find an income that I'd still be able to buy my heroin, I took a job at a gentleman's club. And again, the justification, I'm just going to bartend. I'm just going to bartend at the strip club. And so that made it okay in my head, but it's only a matter of time when you're in that environment. So it was very traumatic being in the strip clubs, things that I witnessed, things that I saw. So I went to more and more drugs to just bury it because I still had to make my money, because I still had to get my drugs. And that's around the time I switched to the needle. But I met a man in the strip club that I thought was my, you know, knight in shining armor, because, you know, that's where the knights are. You find them in the strip club, the knights in shining armor.
Right.
Yeah, really in denial there. So he was also an addict. He had lost his lower right leg in an industrial accident, so he was prescribed an obscene amount of narcotics and benzos. And he convinced me to move to Minnesota with him, and I did. And that was the most abusive relationship I was in to date.
Wow.
Our addictions and my codependency, they fed off of each other. And I always made justifications like it was the drugs, it wasn't him that was hurting me. There was a lot more mental abuse in the beginning once I was isolated. And then when it switched to the physical abuse, I can remember one night, well, he had me get my nursing license in Minnesota because even though he was prescribed an obscene amount of narcotics and I got scripts of narcotics, we would blow through them in a week or two. So he had me get my nursing license in Minnesota, and then I started stealing narcotics working as a nurse in Minnesota. And I don't blame him for that because I wanted the drugs too. So it was not like I was doing it at his suggestion, but I was 100% willing to do it. And they figured out that I was stealing narcotics out there as well. And I actually got interviewed by a detective. And then about a week or so after the detective interviewed me, we got into a huge fight in the middle of the night. And he actually grabbed me by my throat and threw me through the bathroom door. And my daughter was around 5 or 6 years old. She was asleep in the other room. And at that point, I got terrified that what if he kills me or he hurts her? So I did call the police and he was arrested. They took pictures, they took my statement. And then the next morning when I woke up, I went into panic mode. What am I going to do without his drugs? What am I going to do without his money? How am I going to do this alone? It was like a codependent spiral. So I actually, in the midst of the crazy, went to the doctor's office and I told them this new psych medication you have me on is causing paranoid delusions and hallucinations. I need you to put that in my medical records. They did. And then I took those medical records to the prosecutor's office and I said, he didn't hurt me. I made it all up. I tried to convince the courts that I was just crazy, to get him out of jail. And the prosecutor looked at me and said, the pictures the police took of your injuries that night match the story you gave that night. You're lying to try to get him out of trouble. So the state is going to pick up the charges. And then his parents bailed him out and he basically fled Minnesota. They bought him a plane ticket, rented him a car to go up to the Twin Cities. He stranded my daughter and I with no money, no nothing in Minnesota. We had to go stay in a battered women's shelter for 3 weeks while my family came up with the money to get me back up to Ohio. I get back up to Ohio. And one of the first things I do, because I know he's back in Ohio, is I reach out to him and we start linking up. Like, my family didn't want me near him. His family didn't want me near, Yeah. But I would leave my family's house and walk down to the park and he would pick me up and we'd go rent hotel rooms where we would do large amounts of heroin together. It spiraled. It took me a while to finally get away from him. I don't know where he is to this day, and I'm kind of grateful for that. Yeah. But I was still so lost to the heroin at that point. My daughter's father suspected that I was on heroin, and he wanted what was best for our daughter, so he was suing me for full custody. And I can remember I went to the basement of the courthouse to shoot up because I didn't want to go in front of the magistrate with withdrawal symptoms. And in that moment, I realized my daughter deserves better than what I had become because I was just lost. I was a dead woman walking, and I agreed to sign over full custody of my daughter to her father. I had also been arrested for a felony robbery because of shoplifting. No chance of getting my nursing license back. I was lost. I had become a junkie, a whore, a thief, a felon, you name it. I felt that I was scum on the bottom of the pond type of thing. Yeah. And I ended up bouncing from place to place. My family would let me live in like a rental property. I wouldn't pay any bills. Everything I made went to heroin or crack. I had added crack to the regimen at that point. And I can remember getting kicked out of the rental property because I wasn't paying anything. And I moved in with a drug dealer. And at this point, I was on probation for, an F3 robbery, and I was robbing the drug dealer while I was living with him. I would break into his room. He had a padlock on the door. I'd use a flathead screwdriver. I'd go into his room, and I would steal money and drugs off of him, and then when he'd get back from a run, I would buy more drugs off of him with his own money that I stole from him. Wow. And he discovered, obviously, what was happening, and so he was kicking me out And at that point, like, I couldn't live like that anymore. I lost my daughter. I lost my family. I lost my home. I lost my nursing license, my dignity, my self-worth. I just wanted to die.
Yeah.
So I attempted suicide, and God actually used the drug dealer to intervene. He walked in on me, and saw what I had done. He applied pressure to my wrist to stop the bleeding, and he took the blade off of me before I could get to the other blade. And, he called my family, and it was decided at that point that he was going to drop me off. I was getting kicked out of his house. He was going to drop me off at my family's house, and they were going to put me in detox. And when I threw all my stuff in bags, and at that point I just didn't care, I had a purse with a pocket on the side, and I had 2 syringes, a crack pipe, and a spoon just hanging out of the side of the pocket in plain sight. We went to leave the apartment. We were walking down the steps, and we were met at the bottom of the steps with the head of Columbiana County Drug Task Force and 3 other officers in full tactical gear. And they knew me. Like, the head of Drug Task Force, he knew I was on felony probation, and he asked the drug dealer, "Where are you taking her?" And he said, "I'm taking her to her families to go to detox." I had 3 years in prison hanging over my head, and I should have been arrested at that point, even just for the paraphernalia that was in plain sight.
Right.
So they kind of searched a little bit, and then the detective, he stepped to the side and he said, "Good luck, Miss Hinkle." And I was just floored. So I went to my family's house, and then I robbed them of $500 while I was there for that weekend for one last hurrah. They discovered it that Monday morning, and they were done. Their hands were washing me. I had nowhere else to go. They took me to East Liverpool Hospital to the detox unit, and my uncle just dropped me off. He didn't even help me get my bags out of the car. He was like, he didn't even say a word. Oh. They were done. They washed their hands of me. It had been so many years of me stealing from them, lying, manipulating, you name it. And when I was in detox, I can remember I was so angry with God. I was so angry that he just didn't let me die. Like, in my addiction, I was to the point where I was begging the dealers to just sell me a hot shot. Like, I can't live like this anymore. Don't tell me, just sell me a hot shot. I want to die. But they made too much money off of me. So I told God, I'm like, it's end of January, foot of snow on the ground. I have nowhere to go. Like, it's in your hands now because I'm done. Like, I don't know what else to do. And so at that point, the case manager at the detox told me there was a place in Vienna, Ohio called Hannah's House. And I grew up in the Salem, Latonia area. It's 40 minutes up north. I'd never heard of it. I called, and it's a year-long faith-based program that's part of the Warren Family Mission, and it's 100% free. They do not charge the women's insurance. They will help you get there if you need help getting there. They make sure that you don't have to worry about food, clothing, anything. All you have to do is focus on getting yourself right.
Wow.
So, and it is faith-based. So you're in classes a lot. And I went there, and it was the hardest year of my life. I didn't have substances to bury things anymore. I was cutting for the first 6 months that I was in the program because that was the one thing I could get away with doing to escape reality. And I wasn't ready to surrender yet. Even the people that were being kind to me and showing me Christ's love, because I had been on the streets for so long, I was very suspicious. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah,
why are you buying me dinner? Why do you want to, what are you trying to get from me? Like, I truly believe it was another I was used to narcissists and sociopaths, and, they're always trying to, like, groom you to get something over on you. I didn't understand that there actually are genuinely good people out here that want to help us recover and just be kind to be kind. And that's also, during that year, I was introduced to Celebrate Recovery because we did an in-house step study. So I completed that year, and when I left, I had heard a still small whisper in my head, my last class, that said Greenford Christian. So when I left, I made my mom get off the freeway. I walked into Greenford Christian on a Thursday, and I said, "Hi, I'm a heroin addict. I have a year sober. I just completed a program. If I don't connect with other believers, I'm going to relapse." And I was welcomed into that church. if we look at addiction, addiction is isolation. So the opposite of that is community. And I know different people find different roads to recovery. You got to find the community you fit in with, because when you find that community, that's what's going to help you overcome your addiction. It's when we start isolating and thinking we have to do things on our own that the disease starts whispering in our ears.
Yeah.
And as long as you find somewhere to plug in, and I found that here at Celebrate Recovery, Randy would just come in, here early again? Well, I guess I need help in the cafe. So I'd set up the cafe, and then I started greeting, and then they asked me to be women's chemical dependency leader here at DFC, and I started doing that, and then I led my first women's step study, and then I started going into Hannah's House, the program I graduated from, to lead an in-house step study for them. I volunteered once a week. I would go in, and it was kind of really cool to actually be able to work with the women whose seats I once sat in. And I did that for up until a few months ago, because when I had been doing Celebrate Recovery and rebuilding my life. I have restoration with my daughter now. I don't have full custody. Her dad does, but he and I are actually friends now.
Oh, that's awesome.
I recognize I do have worth. I do have value. I am not the sum total of my past mistakes and decisions. I am who God says that I am. It doesn't matter that I was an addict. It doesn't matter that I was a thief. It doesn't matter all the things that I destroyed. That's not who I am. I wanted nothing to do with men at this point. Absolutely nothing to do with men. I ended up, I was friends with this man on Facebook who was at Ohio Valley Teen Challenge. He was from Boston, and he was safe. We only ever talked about food, and he had asked me about going. He had never been to Permanente Brothers, and I thought, oh, a sandwich with a real live person, because the shutdown had happened at this point. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted a sandwich with a real live person, and he'll tell you it was our first date, but I wanted nothing to do with men. But this man showed me nothing but respect and kindness, and he's now my husband. There was no judgment from him either. He's in recovery as well. I have maybe, I think, 6 months longer recovery than him. So it took him 3 or 4 dates before he asked for permission to hold my hand. Complete gentleman, so respectful. So God has really blessed me there. And then we've had some ups and downs. Like, it's not, even when you're in recovery, it's not always rainbows and butterflies, but you learn the tools to actually process through and deal with the fights and the arguments and the things that life throws at you. So I started doing my my CDCA, and I just took a picture of my course book and posted on Facebook, several courses down, several to go. And a girlfriend of mine reached out to me, and she said, hey, I work for New Day Recovery. We need a resident monitor at our detox building, and we promote from within. Come interview. It'll be great. So I did, and it was the best interview of my life, and I got the job, and I was so excited. I felt like that I'm walking out my purpose. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. About 3-4 weeks into my job, I got a call from HR, and because of my felony robbery from my past, they said, we have to take you off the schedule. And I was devastated. It was the worst weekend of my life. It was horrible, horrible. And one thing I've learned in recovery, it is okay to feel your emotions. You got to process through them. You got to feel them. You just don't stay stuck in them. Right. So I stayed in those emotions all weekend. I was upset, depressed, angry. And I was a little mad at God too. Like, what is happening? I felt that I was... So that Monday, I got up and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to the courthouse. I'm going to file for an expungement. I'm going to do what I need to do. And because it's an F3 robbery, it doesn't qualify for an expungement, but I still was trying. But after I went to the courthouse, I got a call back from the HR director for on-demand New Day Recovery. And they said, we really don't want to lose you as an employee. How would you feel if we create a daytime housekeeping position at our corporate office until you can do what you want to do? I said, I'm not too good to scrub toilets. When do I start? So I started doing that, and it's a huge building in Austintown, and they have 18 toilets and 4 urinals. So I really humbled myself, and I've realized that sometimes in recovery, we get ahead of ourselves and we want what we want when we want it. It's like that addict mentality of instant gratification. But I've learned sometimes we have to earn things, and we have to humble ourselves. And I did that. I scrubbed that. I put a Fitbit on. That building is so big. I cleaned it immaculately with a smile on my face every day for over a year. I was putting in 16,000 to 18,000 steps a day cleaning that building. I did it to the best of my ability. And there were times where, like my addiction's talking in my ear, you're better than this. You were a nurse. You're educated. Now you're scrubbing toilets. You're back to being... But no, that it was honorable. I was doing what I needed to do to support myself. And then in the meantime, they never filled my position. And my husband had left Teen Challenge, and he was really struggling not working with people in recovery as well. He was having a hard time with it. So I called the clinical director over there, and I said, can I bring my fiance in for an interview since you haven't filled my spot? He went in, and they hired him, and he's been there ever since. He's been there almost a year and a half now, and he loves it, and he's thriving. And by the time my year had passed, I had already had my CDCA came in, and I was able to transfer to, instead of going back to detox, I was able to go straight into the women's residential program to work there, which, and I love all my guys in recovery. You guys are great, but I ain't got nothing for you. I can't relate our I firmly believe women with women, men with men. I can relate to women. I can give them advice. I don't get how dudes think. I don't. So, it worked out, and it had to work out that way. And then I was there for quite a while at the women's residential recovery center. And then I got a phone call that the treatment facility, Hannah's House, that I had graduated from with the Warren Family Mission, they needed a clinical director for their program. And my husband and I discussed it, and we prayed about it, and I accepted the position. And I've been doing that for about 3 months now. And I feel that with my story, everything that I've learned, everything that I've overcome, then working in secular recovery and going back to faith-based, it's a really cool thing, because I've learned what works in secular recovery and what doesn't, what works in faith-based recovery and what doesn't. So I'm able to kind of mesh the two to get a really good flow. The Hannah's House actually shut down for a little bit, probably about 9-10 months ago, because they just couldn't get any clients. And I feel that this was my purpose all along, and God was building me for this role, because now we're an 8-bed facility. I have 7 beds full, and I'm holding one. I have a woman that's supposed to be going into detox this week, and she's supposed to be taking my last bed. It's the women, they're here with me at the 5K today. They're volunteering. They're learning the importance of service work. They weren't going to any outside meetings prior to me coming. I have them going to Celebrate Recovery meetings. There's an NA meeting up in Warren it's an all women's meeting called Fight. Well, and I don't really think it's NA. I think it's more all encompassing rather than a fellowship, but it's called Fight Club. And we're going to start going there once a month to help out. So I'm able to expose them to different things. When I was at New Day Recovery, I was able to take those women to AA meetings, to NA meetings, to Celebrate Recovery meetings, so they could see what path worked best for them.
Right.
And it's been a true blessing.
And so you're rebuilding your relationship with your daughter right now? Okay, that's awesome.
She's 15 and a half, so it's a little rough. It's a little rough.
Yep.
Yeah, not a fun age. But things are really good. And one thing that I realized, and this is too where having a good support network comes in. We were having a lot of fights, my daughter and I. And what someone pointed out to me is I was struggling with guilt of not being there when she was younger, because of my addiction. So instead of trying to parent her as a young adult, because, she's 14, 15, I was still trying to parent her like she was the 8, 9-year-old so I wasn't respecting boundaries. I wasn't taking into consideration the trauma that I put her through or that she witnessed through my addiction. And it was creating a lot of conflict where she didn't really want to be around me because I wasn't treating her the way she deserved to be treated. So when I had a friend who is also a counselor point that out to me, and I looked through a different lens, and I realized I have to forgive myself for those years that I lost with her, and start treating her her age rather than trying to make up for time. Right. So the restoration is a lot better now.
That's so good to hear. And what have you learned from your addiction?
I have learned that none of us are too far gone. There is hope for absolutely everybody. I would not, you ask people sometimes if they would go back and change anything. I wouldn't change a bit. I would not change that I walked through the traumas that I walked through. I would not change the addiction, everything I wouldn't change a thing because I wouldn't be the woman that I am today. I have learned that most of the time, what we have gone through is where we will find our purpose. And I know that addiction doesn't end with me. Trauma doesn't end with me. There's other women experiencing that. And because I have walked through it, I can actually help and actually offer hope to other people because we do recover.
Yes, we do. And for somebody out there struggling right now, do you have any words of hope that you could share?
It is absolutely never too late, and it doesn't matter how many times you failed. It matters when you get it right and start. Sometimes it's hard for us to reach out when we're in those low places because of the shame, the embarrassment, the guilt, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes all it takes is reaching out just that once because you matter, you are valued, you are worthy, and if nobody told you today that they love you, I absolutely love you, and you're worth it.
Well, thank you so much, Brianne, for coming out
absolutely.
Being so honest and open and just candidly sharing your story with us. It will help a lot of people. I know it because that helped me today. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you.